because they're pretty short. So 13 says, with the existence of the root, there will be fruits also, namely the births of different species of life, their lifespans and experiences. Here you might think about what species you may belong to in your next birth. You need not get a human body. If your thoughts are animalistic, the karmas may call for an animal's body. If someone is always cunning in this life, the reactions will bring forth more cunning actions, which might be better expressed through a fox's body. Or a person who wants to eat excessively might take a pig's body so he or she can enjoy that more. But don't think that this contradicts the theory of evolution. The individual soul always continues to evolve. Even though the individual may get various bodies, which are evolved to a greater or lesser degree and which experience things through these different forms, he or she continues to progress. Remember that the body is not the experiencer. Life is experienced by the mind through the body. The body is only a vehicle or instrument. When a flower is fragrant, it is not the nose that experiences the fragrance, but the mind through the nose. If the mind doesn't want to function through the nose because it is occupied elsewhere, it won't experience the fragrance even if the flower is placed right next to the nose. When we are concentrating on a book, we won't hear our friend even if he or she shouts at us, not because our ears are closed, but because the mind is not connected to the ears at this point. So it is the mind that experiences and enjoys everything, not the organs of the body. Even in an animal's body, the mind experiences and undergoes things. And whenever we gain experience, we progress, we purge, and we eventually reach our destination. In our life's journey towards realization, each body is a different vehicle. A dog on the road may have once been a saint who, by a small mistake, got into that body. A fox may once have been a miserly, cunning business person. A scorpion might have been a big employer, always stinging his or her employees. So we can't say they are merely animals. Within each form lies a soul on its evolutionary path towards realization. The sutra also tells us that the span of each life and experiences of pleasure and pain are determined by karma, which in turn is the fruit of the obstacles mentioned before. Number 14 says, the karmas bear fruits of pleasure and pain caused by merit and demerit. If you have done something meritorious, you experience pleasure and happiness. If wrong things, suffering. A happy or unhappy life is your own creation. Nobody else is responsible. If you remember this, you won't find fault with anybody. You are your own best friend as well as your worst enemy. So for number 13, he talks about incarnating, or the possibility of being able to incarnate into an animal's body after being in a human body. So this one confuses me a little because I've heard contradicting teachings about this. But so I've heard that it isn't possible after incarnating as a human to incarnate as an animal again. But then this teaching obviously says something different than that. I think it's interesting to think that if you really like eating, that you might incarnate as a pig, or that if you're really cunning, that you might incarnate as a fox or something like that. But to me, when I was growing up and I first heard about reincarnation, it always kind of made sense that you could incarnate into whatever body. It didn't necessarily need to be a human body. So that was just my thought on it. Growing up, it seems to make sense. Like, why do humans, we have language and we have things that animals don't have, but why do we think that once we've incarnated into a human body that nothing else is possible? That that the souls or the selves that live within animals aren't experiencing their own karmas or working out their own karmas through their incarnations, and just because we're in a human body, that we wouldn't be able to incarnate into an animal's body after this. So yeah, like I said, I've heard conflicting things on that, but I think what he says in the first passage, remember that the body is not the experiencer. So when I first was reading this, I was just a little confused. But when he says, even though the individual may get various bodies which are evolved to a greater or lesser degree, and which experience things through these different forms, he or she continues to progress. Remember that the body is not the experiencer. Life is experienced by the mind through the body. The body is only a vehicle or instrument. So to me, that kind of went back to what I was saying before, that that you can't go backwards, and just because you're incarnating into a body that isn't a human body doesn't mean that you're going backwards in terms of your evolution and the evolution of your spirit. I think this is saying that you're always going forward, and that different bodies are just suitable to work out whatever the karmas that you acquire in each life are. So I guess that even that in itself can be kind of confusing. So I wanted to give an example, because he talks a lot about pleasure and pain, and how our experiences in the mind of pleasure and pain create the karmas that we have to work out in the future lives. So I heard a teacher talking about this once, making the example of a woman who was just during her life just very obsessed with beauty and being beautiful. And she just like caused, I forget what exactly he said, but the gist of it was that she caused herself all this suffering worrying about her physical appearance and her beauty, that when she was getting older she was unhappy and dissatisfied because of the perception of beauty that she had. And it kind of goes back to these teachings too, because with the kleshas, attachment to the physical body, attachment to I-ness, all these things that you're identifying as the self that aren't really the self, these ignorances. So in attaching herself to beauty, she kind of separated herself from her true self and became ignorant and attached to the body. So I think what he said was that working out that karma, that in her next life she was born as a really, really beautiful woman, but then through that experience in that body she was able to learn that, or she had to work out the karma to learn that beauty isn't everything, and that it wasn't going to bring her peace and happiness. That even though in the next life that she had, that she was beautiful, but it still didn't give her the peace or the connection, or it didn't absolve, well, the idea that she was born as a beautiful person helped her to work out the karma of being so dissatisfied from the previous life. So I like that example because it kind of made sense to me. It kind of helped me understand, or it reminded me when we were talking about the different karmas, how in this life there's nothing you can do about the karmas that you're working out in the current one. But what you can control is the ones that you create within this one, and the ones that you create to be worked out in future karmas, in future incarnations. And then in 14, I think it just goes back to saying the same thing, that our aversions or our experiences of pleasure and pain, like it's what he's saying, how all these experiences occur in the mind. It doesn't really have much to do with the outside circumstances, because like you said, a flower can be placed right next to your nose and you won't smell it until your mind decides to smell it. So it's kind of like the feelings that you have on a daily basis are just that. It's the perceptions in your mind, what you're making out of it. And I think keeping the karmas in mind, I was thinking about what Jackie was saying yesterday about how we're not really supposed to be concerned necessarily, or we're not supposed to attach to the consequences of our action. And reading this, it can seem hard to do that because right now I'm just afraid that I'm going to incarnate as a pig if I like eat too much. But it's just that I think it's just that it's helpful to know, but it is hard to step outside of it and detach from what you think will happen if you do something that you perceive as the wrong thing, or vice versa, doing what you perceive as the right thing just to get something out of it. So I think it can be kind of squirrely there, especially when you're diving into these teachings. For me, reading about becoming an animal makes me scared. That's scary. And I think that could absolutely, like, that fear could absolutely influence my action today. But I like how he ends the 14th passage saying, "You are your own best friend as well as your own worst enemy." I think we all have experiences like that, even on a daily basis, where nothing really on the outside is changing, but depending on what you're thinking about, you can have a really bad day or a really good day. So what do you guys think about that?
Ashley, you cracked me up when you said reincarnate as a pig.
But it's true. It is scary. It's not the ability. Like, you can be the happiest. You can be Kramer, the happiest puppy on earth, but it's still not like you don't have the ability to open the door and go out when you want to go out. Like, you know what I mean? Like the simplest things.
I would love to come back as Kramer. I mean, just let someone like spoil me for 17 years.
But he can't leave when he wants to. He has to wait for you to take him out.
He can, because he just comes and nudges my hand and I take him out.
Not if you're not home.
I know.
Kramer has some really good karma. Like, you must.
I thought about what Jackie said a lot too yesterday, and I was trying to like think of an example of, because like it kind of opened my eyes. But then after I thought about it, I was like, all right, maybe it's kind of like if I want to take a walk around the block every day, not because it brings me joy, because then you're attaching to that, but just because it feels like the right thing for me to do that day. If that's just something I want to do every day, it's just walk around the block, then all the benefits are just gonna come anyway. And I think that's kind of like what Patanjali is saying. Like, if you just keep doing the work, these benefits are gonna come. Like, somebody might be like, oh, you walk 2 miles every day, you're gonna lose so much weight, you're gonna tone up your legs, you're gonna do all these great things. But then if I start attaching to that and I'm like, oh, I'm going to lose weight, maybe I should walk faster. You know, like it could become a negative. But then I spent all day thinking about this and I drove myself crazy.
Yeah, it's like in the previous sutra, he says, just imagine how many actions you perform, how many have brought forth reactions, and how many reactions must be pending. It says good and bad actions bring either meritorious or demeritorious reactions. So it's just like that.
I find it interesting because that's one of my mantras that I have. Hi, everyone, and good morning. One of my mantras that I have that helped me so much when I'm in a tough situation and I feel like I'm about to just react is me detaching from the body. And I tell myself, I'm not the body, I'm a spiritual being, I am love, love, love. And it reminds me, like, Angel, you're creating an experience. Like, don't let the emotions or whatever it is that you are feeling at the moment detach from all of it and remind yourself to connect to your heart so that it can allow me to process and you know, take my time to respond to whatever it is that I may be going through. So even I think that when he said you may become an animal or something, at the end of the day, you're still creating a situation in the moment to live a certain way. There's people that say that they experience themselves living in multiple bodies at the same time. That they feel like they're an animal, they feel like this or they feel like that. Like and I never understood it, but this is like, like I wonder if that's what it is. Like I don't know that.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so I like how he explains that you need different bodies to work out different karmas, because in certain life circumstances it's impossible to work out certain lessons, and in others it's opportunistic. So and the idea in the Vedas is that before you're born you basically are designing life as a giant obstacle course for yourself to figure all this out. So, and yeah.
This kind of reminds me, good morning, everybody. This kind of reminds me of like astrology, because so I think about that, like the snapshot of the sky the moment I was born can reveal so much about myself. So it must be true what you're saying, that all of these things were decided and worked out. I don't know if it was before, because time is relative, but I feel like yeah, there must be some sort of agreement, because everything seems to line up. When you look at your astrological chart, you're like, how does this even work? How is it even possible that my life is written in the stars? And it must be, I mean, I don't know what it must be, but I'm thinking I must have said, okay, when I come back, I'll come back as this person and I'll work out, you know, the karma of this lineage, of these people, of this thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind coming back as a pig. Especially after watching that movie with Emma, and everybody loved Emma, and she's just so cute.
There's a book that talks, I can't remember the title of it, but something of the soul, and it's basically this whole it's about, it was a hard book for me to read. I dragged it out for months, but it was about the conversation that the souls have and how we might keep coming back, like how it could be the same souls. It is the same souls, not could be, the way this book puts it. And these souls have, so example, me, Pierre, and my kids, before coming, there's this whole conversation on what I'm gonna do, what body's gonna carry me, and what maybe there might be disease, and maybe that is because my husband and my kids need to learn and burn off whatever, because they have to struggle through that, of like, due to this happening. And the souls pick, like there's this whole conversation like, all right, I'm gonna pick this suffering for this lifetime so you can learn and work through this and this and that. So there is a whole plan.
It definitely seems that way the more you pay attention to these things. And like if you read your birth chart and stuff like that, blows my mind. I went to see Naina Marbali, the Ayurvedic practitioner that Amanda recommended me to. And she read my pulse, and she like read my whole birth chart and was able to tell me stuff about my parents and their health and like all kinds of stuff from reading my pulse.
That's crazy.
It was crazy. It blew my mind. I like But they do say they can do that. They can read your whole Vedic birth chart from your pulse.
Can I say something about the next one that you?
Yeah.
I really agree with this part where he says you can be your best friend or your worst enemy, or your, I don't think he said worst, it was some other word. And I totally am sometimes my worst enemy. And it's like you don't really see it sometimes. You know, you don't see the way that you block your own blessings. And sometimes I wonder if, like, on the one hand, you're supposed to wake up to this and you're supposed to, I guess, correct behavior, or, you know, like modify your lifestyle so that you're in alignment with truth and with love. But at the same time, sometimes I think the not knowing is also very important. Like the suffering, the struggle is important to your evolution, because like, would I, let's say I am not working on becoming a better person, but my life has certain circumstances. Like me, like this version of me may not be enlightened, may not be a yogi, may not be, you know, devoted to God, or any of the things that might help me escalate this karmic, what do you call it? This karmic, whatever, my card, the hand I've been dealt. But if I struggle in my life, does that still help me grow, even though I'm not awake to it? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, am I working through karma, even if I am not consciously, as Adriana, working through my karma? Like, let's say I just have a really difficult life. Does that absolve some karma? Does that help alleviate karma? Or do I have to be awake to it?
It depends on, I think what all what he's saying is that depends on your reaction to your circumstance. So it always reminds me of the Bhagavad Gita, because the story is about a war, and it's a conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. Arjuna is the main warrior, and he's very upset about having to fight this war and having to kill these people, and Krishna is basically explaining to him that his job like his job in this incarnation is to accept his dharma of this life, which is his duty in this life, and his duty is as a warrior. So I forget what the quote is, but he says, it's the quote that they always say about how basically it's better to do your own job than to do someone else's job perfectly.
Yeah.
So
to do your own job
imperfect something.
I don't know
practice your own dharma imperfectly, then try to practice the dharma of another person perfectly.
Yes, that one. And it reminds me of that because I think I read something, I think it was from the Sutra yesterday. He said we control the Agami and the Sanjita, but we can't do anything about the Prarabdha. We just have to accept it. So the cycle continues until self-realization comes. So if you have a difficult life and you don't consciously know that you've set yourself up and you're trying to evolve your spirit in some way, and you don't take conscious action to return to your idea of your true self, and you act from a place of your fears or your ignorance or your ego, that creates more karma for you to work out in the future, versus if you have the space. And I think he says, you know, meditation is the best way to absolve these, is because it gives you the space to connect with your true inner self and accept the circumstances that you're in, rather than create aversions to them with your mind.
Okay, thank you. I'm just really like listening. I don't know how I feel about reincarnation. I still have the image in my mind that that I go to heaven. That this version of me reunites with God in heaven, and not just with God, but with all the people, all the other people who have died. And like in this, in this lifetime, this version of me feels very connected to my ancestry. So to me, it's confusing to think that the ancestors I'm asking guidance from, or that I'm looking towards for wisdom and answers, like that they no longer exist, that their spirit has moved on to some other work in some other place. So it almost, like my dad died many years ago, but I feel like on certain days I'll light a candle for him. If it's his birthday, if it's the day that he died, I remember him, I say a prayer for him. And sometimes I'll ask for guidance from my father. And to think that he's in a different body on a different assignment is like, well, what am you know, like then my prayers are going up to nothing. Do you know what I mean? Like I have a little conflict here.
Yeah.
I've read like
Sorry,
I read something once that we reincarnate in soul circles, so we would wait for each other. And once you exit the body, time isn't really, you realize how not real time is, where it doesn't feel like waiting, if that makes any sense. Like you're vibrating at such a high frequency, so you don't embody again until the next time you all embody. Like I had a psychic tell me once my father was like, I was like, oh, you told some other people, we were at some party, so you told some other people that they had like these ancestors, these spirits that were like following them around and taking care of them, like they're what's the word I'm looking for, like a guardian, a guardian angel, but not an angel, like a soul, a spirit soul, a spirit guide. And she's like, no, you don't have any of those. And I was like, well, why don't I have any of those? I was like, well, why do other people have those and I don't have that? And she's like, oh, because your father is your spirit guide, but he's embodied right now. And I was like, oh, wow. And then I started crying because it felt so real what she was saying. But I feel like I don't think your dad has gone anywhere yet.
Yeah, they have a difference between human earth years and divine years, they call it. And yeah, the timeline is not the same.
Like the life one day of Brahman, I can't, it's ridiculous. It's like one day of Brahman is like 70,000 or something like that, right? It's like millions of, I have to look it up, I can't remember the number, but
yeah. And I've heard that also, that the idea is that you incarnate with souls together, and you like incarnate in different roles in each other's lives.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
That's what was in that book.
Many lives. Which one?
That book that I was talking about. Let me see if I find it.
Adriana, have you ever read Many Lives, Many Masters?
No, I haven't.
You should.
That book blew my mind.
Me too.
Okay, yes. Does anyone have it for me to borrow?
I might. I'll look in my library.
I definitely have it.
Oh, I found the book. This is what I was talking about. Your Soul's Plan.
Oh, cool.
I mean, it took me forever to get through it because there's a lot of stuff that it's just mind-boggling. It's already 8:03.
Okay, should we move into breath work?
Yeah.
All right.
I'm gonna mute everyone.
Okay. All right, let's all sit up nice and tall. Let's just take 3 really big, deep breaths into the belly and let them out through the mouth. We'll start with some alternate nostril breathing, taking the pointer and middle finger to the palm, emptying all the air out, closing off the right nostril with the thumb, inhaling through the left, closing off the left, exhaling through the right, inhaling through the right, exhaling through the left, inhaling through the left, exhaling through the right, inhaling through the right, exhaling through the left, inhaling through the left, exhaling through the right, inhaling through the right, exhaling through the left, inhaling through the left, exhaling through the right, inhaling through the right, exhaling through the left. Moving through that on your own a few more times before settling in. Starting to come back into the room. Fluttering the eyes open. Maybe taking a stretch. Thank you guys.
Thanks, Ash.